So, my name is Africa, and that is me and my tea ritual in my home. The topic of brave expression is one that I feel so fiercely about. And the reason for that is, especially because of the climate that we're in right now, there's a level of intolerance that I personally find to be extremely worrying. And I think there was a time when we thought these things are maybe isolated to the digital world, but there is a very real world impact when it comes to this. And I think we need to be encouraging each other to be braver, to be more audacious, to be more courageous, to be willing to say enough is enough, to stop agreeing with things that we don't actually agree with, to stop putting forward opinions that we believe are safe, but I do believe that we need to be discerning at the same time. So the conversation that we're going to have today is about the courage to speak up. Now, the first question that I wanted to pose is a question that I actually found in my journal maybe a couple of months ago, and it was from 2020, which for me was the year where my self-censorship took a peak that I didn't even expect. And I'll give you the details of that in a moment. But the question that I wrote down was, when did I learn that my voice was dangerous? So I wanted to pose the same question to you. And again, this is where we're just going to pause for a moment. And again, you don't have to share any of these things with me. This is yours. But when did you learn that your voice was dangerous? When did you learn that your voice was dangerous? Is there maybe one incident? Is there something that happened when you were a child? Are you from a certain culture where you're not supposed to speak in a certain way? Was it with a partner? Was it with a stranger online? Was it with a teacher? Many of us do have these moments where we've been told or given a signal in some way that our voice was dangerous, that our opinion was not the right opinion to hold. So I just wanted to open this conversation up with that question. When did you learn that your voice was dangerous? Now, for me, I've had many periods in my life actually where I've kind of been given the idea or told explicitly that my voice was dangerous or my opinion was not the right one to have. But for the sake of time, I'm going to zone in on a very specific timeline. And for me, this was the summer of 2020. We were all in lockdown. I would say most of us were in lockdown at this time. And this was when there was the racial reckoning that happened in America, triggered by the killing, the death of George Floyd. And I had been at this point in time part of many different social justice groups, not committed to any very specific group, but just in terms of my values and what I stand for. I do believe that social justice is very important. But I hadn't realized that somewhere down the line, I had made myself believe that as a Black woman, as a supposed left-leaning woman, and the reason I'm doing that is because I've never aligned myself with either the left or the right, but people look at my identity markers and they have an idea about where I should fit and what kind of opinion I should have. So in the summer of 2020, I found myself parroting things that I didn't actually believe in. I found myself feeling just a very obscene level of pressure to speak in a way that was not in integrity with me. And the main thing that I pushed back on at the time was this idea that every single white person by default is racist and they have to sort of atone for this sin that is called white supremacy. Things that I did not believe in any shape or form, but I felt that I needed to in order to belong to my community. And if you ask me what community that is, all I can say is the Black community, right? Because we're seen as a monolith. We're all supposed to share the same opinion, speak in the same way, have the same identical worldview, typically one that is seen as being correct. Now, at this point in time, I had been in the public eye already for about 6 years. And I've always done work around self-sabotage, which is when you get in your own way. I always describe it as when you are the one poking holes in your own ship. And I think a lot of us would kind of know what that looks like and feels like. But I had been doing very big work around courage and bravery and the importance of speaking up. And there was a huge integrity breach in the way that I was actually behaving publicly because my beliefs just didn't align with my community anymore. But I truly believed that I wasn't allowed to change my mind. And that summer of 2020 showed me that I was so deeply out of integrity because I had made myself believe that my voice was dangerous, that the truth, and it doesn't mean it's a universal truth, but the truth for me at that time, that I didn't believe these things that people were saying racially. I understood the significance of the moment. I understood that there are things that happened that shouldn't have happened, but I also understood that there was much context that I was not allowed to have access to. There was much context that people were not allowed to have access to or to acknowledge that they had seen. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because even at that time where publicly I had been doing very courageous work, there was a huge discrepancy between my private self and my public self. And that's an invitation that I would love to make for all of us right now. Something else to think about. Is there a discrepancy between your private self and your public self? That's another question. Is there a discrepancy between your private self and your public self? And another reason that I am posing these reflections and questions and trying to share my own personal story instead of it just being another expert that stands in front of you and tells you what to do and, gives you all of their intellectual property and just sort of leaves without actually making themselves vulnerable in some kind of way. I do think it's very important for me to be truthful about why I believe that conversations like this are crucial, because I really do believe that it's never, ever been more urgent to claim our voices in a world that is constantly demanding silence from us. I want to do something that I call a voice audit. And this is something that I do with clients of mine. It's something that I do for myself quite regularly. And this is where, if anyone in the audience right now feels confident enough to do so, maybe you could share an answer to even one of these questions. But again, these are for you. You can take a photo of them, you can write them down and reflect on them later on, whatever feels most comfortable for you. And you can take a photo of any of these things, by the way, or little snippets that you think you might refer back to. But as we have this conversation around the courage to speak up, I have 3 questions that I just wanted to put forward. Where am I quiet out of fear? And I don't just want you to think about the societal landscape. I don't just want you to think about cancel culture, which I personally refer to as collective sabotage. I don't want you to think about the bigger external things. I want you to think about the most intimate parts of your life, because this is where a lot of this begins. I think it's so easy to put everything on the climate that we're in right now. But what about your interpersonal relationships? Because I personally believe that that is the most fertile training ground to really see whether you're in or out of integrity. I think it's so easy to perform these versions of ourselves because we have these fancy titles, we do these big things in the world, but in the most intimate parts of your life, what is your relationship with self-censoring? What is your relationship with constantly editing your thoughts and your speech? What is your relationship with feeling so insecure in your worldview and your opinion that you won't allow for yourself to be silent and actually receive what someone else is saying? But specifically, repressing your voice, where am I quiet out of fear? Does anyone feel brave enough to share with us where you're quiet out of fear? Even if it's just one area, one. Yes. Yes, please.
My relationship with my sister, it's not in a very good place for many years, and that forces me to stay quiet many times, especially when I speak to my dad, since my mom passed away and he's been living with us, because of course I don't want him to suffer more, because our relationship between the sisters, it's not the best one. So I have to, this is something that I have to do on a regular basis during some of our conversations.
Does she know?
Yes, she knows, but she doesn't do much in fixing. I try to do all the fixing, but of course, if both parties don't participate, it's kind of difficult.
And if you were not afraid, which is the last question that I have here, what would I say if I wasn't afraid? What would you say?
With her in some conversation that we had just in January when we met for my mom's 7th death anniversary. I said to her, I mean, we have to recognize our errors, leave the past in the past, and try and do better for our family and for our kids. But it's not been it's not working in our case, at least until now.
Thank you for sharing that. And you know, I will reflect something to you that may or may not be useful, but it could also be useful for the room. Something that I've found to be extremely powerful when it comes to brave expression in general is not being over-attached to an outcome. Because anytime that I found myself being over-attached to an outcome, so for example, the outcome that I want is to not feel like a traitor to the Black community, right? Which is absolutely batshit crazy as I say it out loud. It's insane that anyone could have those expectations placed onto them. But the desired outcome that I had was to never feel like the black sheep. The desired outcome that I had was to not ruffle any feathers. The desired outcome that I had was to not be misunderstood. So I repressed myself. So I constantly edited my thoughts and my speech and my honest worldview because I was over-attached to an outcome. What I really appreciate about, first of all, I just appreciate you standing up and actually sharing this with the room. But what I truly appreciate about what you're saying, and maybe what you don't recognize in yourself right now, is that you're still taking the brave path without being over-attached to an outcome. And it doesn't mean you need to have the big conversation in one go right now, but it means you plant seeds over time. It means that you choose integrity over time. It means that you allow yourself to meet yourself where you are right now without being over-attached to being best friends one day or everything working out. So I think one of the most powerful things that we often neglect is that when you take the path without being over-attached to the outcome, you will find the outcome that truly is the right one for you. And I appreciate you sharing. Thank you. Thank you. And the second question, we won't do the last one because it tied in with the first one. Second question is, where do I self-censor the most? Is it in romantic relationships? Is it at work? Is it in meetings? Where do you self-censor the most? Does anyone want to share anything? Yes.
I was born in the only communist ruled state in India, Kerala, and my campus, I used to call it a mini China. We just had the leftist organization, student organization in the campus, and no other kind of organization or organizing was allowed.
Right.
And they just force you to write things they want based on their agenda. And the best thing I could do, and it was still a fight, to abstain from writing what they wanted me to write. So that was one of the horrific experiences I had.
Did you find it easy to kind of, because I feel like what you're talking about is actually going against what you're being told to do, right? Did you find that easy, or was there a build up to it for you?
Like you were mentioning, I was also considered as a traitor, or like, because going against the norm, going against the how the group function is kind of always considered to be something something bad, or like you are an evil in the group. So it made me to self-censor, because the result of going against them would be me getting killed, because that happens quite often in the campuses.
Yes.
So it was difficult, but still, I had, as a person who tried to be creative and entrepreneurial, I created some space externally outside the campus, like a website, an online collective, where I could express myself. But within the campus, I couldn't do anything.
Right. And what is your, I have a question for you. What is your relationship with your voice now?
I like when you were mentioning about the private space and the public space, I try to be very honest with myself, like in both the places, to have the same voice, like to maintain similarity to the maximum extent possible. That's something which I strive achieving, even though I am in many of the spaces where I feel like I am I'm trying to be silenced, or like they don't want me to be, like maybe they ask me to get on calls and say that, oh, you shouldn't be saying that in the group, or like you shouldn't be doing that, because I'm a student of economics, and I follow Austrian tradition mostly.
Right.
So people would think, if I'm in a pluralistic space, but then now they're turning Marxian and they don't want an Austrian voice in their group anymore, so they would ask me to not make comments from the Austrian perspective. So yeah, I've been called and asked to not share my opinions explicitly.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. And you know what? You take me so perfectly onto the next point that I wanted to talk about, which is standing by your values when it's not convenient. Because from your share, and what's your name? Vinay. From your share, I really, again, for me, these conversations are not just a nice to have. Whether it's me having it or someone else having it, I do believe that it's urgent. And I know that I've said that a few times, but all you have to do is look at the world that we're in right now. All you have to do is look at the inability that we have to not only ask questions, but hold ourselves as someone asks an uncomfortable question. We're so stuck in the binaries of left or right or pro or anti or woke or anti-woke that this middle ground, which I call the third perspective, we don't allow ourselves to actually acknowledge that most of us really do exist there. So conversations around values to me underpin a lot of this, because when you ask people, for the most part, what their values are, people will say things like integrity, which I know for me is a top value, freedom, honesty, authenticity, connection, community, intimacy, so many different things. However, something I always say is that the results in your life will show you what it is you truly value. Whether it comes to intimacy, whether it comes to money or help, whatever it is, you can say anything you want to say, but the results in your life will show you what it is you truly value. The results in your life will show you what it is you truly stand for. And I think that can be an uncomfortable thing if there is a discrepancy. But I think the insight you can get from that, just saying, oh, okay, let me just get rid of the stories and narratives that I have about my self-concept and my identity. What are the results in my life right now showing me? What is the quality of my relationships? What is the quality of the conversations that I'm able to have? What is the quality of the questions that I can even ask? That will point you quite beautifully to your values, I believe. Now, as I said, everyone has an idea of what their values are, which I think is good, although some people actually don't. And I think, again, that's another invitation to start thinking deeply about it. But I truly believe that you're shown whether they are embodied values or whether they're just desired values. You want to be someone that values freedom. You want to be someone that values integrity. However, the results in your life are showing you that you haven't quite embodied these things, right? Now, standing by them when it's not convenient to me is the most important thing. And just from this share that we've had right now, the reason why I was smiling quite a lot internally and externally is because there's something so wonderful about people that are willing to stand in their values even when their voice is shaking, even when they are terrified, even though there isn't a queue of people standing behind them to say, I am with you, they are still willing to stand by their values. And I don't believe that's something you're either born with or you're not. I do believe that they are skills, emotional skills and practical skills that you can cultivate as a person. Because I do think sometimes we believe that you're either brave or you're not. You're either confident or you're not. You're either articulate or you're not. But you can, these are all skills, especially when it comes to the emotional skills. You can build the capacity for tolerance. Either side, tolerance of your own worldview and the worldview of other people. Now, I want you to think about what your 3 core values are. And I know a lot of us have done this in the corporate sense, except that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you in your personal life. Again, if you think of that thing that I'm saying about the results in your life, what would you say your 3 values actually are? And then I want you to think about, are they embodied? Meaning, if I was with you on a day-to-day basis, I could actually say, yeah, this person actually embodies these values. Or are they more desired? Meaning that in moments of conflict, or when you're uncomfortable, or when you meet someone that maybe has a more dominant worldview, or maybe when you're afraid that you're going to get cancelled, or you're afraid that you're going to lose community, etc., whatever it might be, you might put that value to the side. So what would you say your 3 main values are? And while you're having a little think, because I would love it if someone feels comfortable to share in a moment, 2020 was really a significant year. And so was the following year when we moved on from race, and now it was about who is getting the vaccine and who isn't getting the vaccine. And then we move on to another thing, and then there's another thing, and then there's another thing, and even now, right? But if you had asked me in 2016, 2017, 18, 19, even the beginning of 2020, what my values were, I would have said freedom and integrity and truth. And those have always been for me. But I was shown, and it was very humbling, that actually truth was not an embodied value. It was me and my ego and my self-concept saying to people that I value truth. That was not the case. I valued truth that was approved. I valued truth that was comfortable. I valued the kind of truth that meant I didn't have to be misunderstood because I was playing it safe and because I was hiding my worldview from people. I was actually shown that the value that was actually more closer to my truth at that time was popularity. And I could never have known that. I would never have said that. I would have said it's truth. But when I looked at the results in my life, like I was saying, I was shown that I was valuing popularity more than truth. So that's the kind of place that I would love for you to get to this, to kind of interrogate some of those wonderful values, the ones that sound really beautiful and the ones that make you more of a compelling and interesting human being, you know. And with this, I will also say, it doesn't mean that I was lying. It doesn't mean that in other areas of my life I didn't value truth. But when it came to the things that truly mattered the most to me, I valued popularity. Does anyone want to share their 3 core values? And then you can just maybe also let me and the room know if you think they're more embodied or desired. And you don't have to go into a whole thing. I don't need you to do a spiritual excavation right now. But yes.
Thank you. I would love to start. My core value is brave, action, and honesty. I can explain why, but I think that it's very similar for everyone. So I'm not sure that
My love, can you repeat those for me?
brave, action, and honesty.
Action and honesty.
Thank you. Maybe someone else wanna share?
It would be rationality, ignorance of fear and pain, and the readiness to admit when I realized I was wrong.
Ooh. Can you would you say for you those have always been embodied? Is it just kind of part of your personality and the way that you are and view the world, or have you had to work quite a bit on those?
I had the privilege of being the ugliest, most obese kid in my class. So you automatically cast out, and no matter how hard you try to please people,
Yes.
they cast you out because you're ugly. Like you have the thick glasses that are like window panes. And so you realize, well, no matter what I do, they will not like me. And then it basically gives you the blank check to say what you think.
Right.
And that was very, very useful in life.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Thank you, Africa. I would say mine are honesty, growth, and independence.
Would you say that those are fully embodied for you, or are they desired, or a combination of the two?
I think independence is pretty fully embodied. Honesty is, but wasn't always. Growth is the one I struggle with because I think it's easy to get into survival mode and not continue to improve.
Yes. Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who shared. I really appreciate it. Now, you've mapped out what your core values are, but I really, again, as you just go away for the rest of today and tomorrow, just to start doing that thing of looking at the results in your life, okay? Because that will give you so much more insight than anything else can. I truly, truly believe that. Now, I want to talk to you about the importance of expressing your ideas with clarity and conviction. Because here's the thing, something I always say, and I write about this quite a lot, is that saying everything and saying nothing are not your only options. Again, we're in this very binary time where we believe that to be courageous, to be brave, to be uncensored means saying whatever you want to say without any discernment, without any thought, without any empathy, without any compassion. And I see this a lot from people that are on the so-called anti-woke side of the aisle, who a lot of them tend to be my people. A lot of them tend to be people that are against intolerance, people that are against cancel culture, people that are saying very important things. However, a lot of the time, and I speak to quite a few of my colleagues about this, they tend to do it in a very ineffective way, where they don't have any empathy, they don't have any compassion, they're not willing to sit and listen, and they're also not willing to change their minds. So they end up behaving in the very same way as the people that they claim to oppose, which I find so wonderful, how people always end up joining hands in being ineffective, you know. It's quite brilliant, but I do think it is important to express your ideas with clarity and conviction and empathy and compassion and openness and a willing to be surprised. Because I really think that's something we don't allow ourselves to be, whether it's to be surprised by your own worldview, to be surprised by your own depth, to be surprised by your own ignorance, and to be surprised by the things that make you nervous and insecure and make you feel challenged, instead of doubling down onto our worldview and forcing it onto someone else. So I want to have that conversation with you by doing something that I call a clarity rehearsal. And it's wonderful that we're doing this in the morning, because you have the entire day to do this, and you can do it tomorrow and the day after and the day after that. But I want to invite you today from that place of being very discerning, from that place of openness, from that place of being in integrity, and from a place of curiosity, genuinely wanting to understand someone else's position. And maybe it's something like this. You're not as likely to find someone that is very, very, very different from you in terms of their worldview or what interests them. But again, be willing to be surprised, because when you're actually in conversation with people over lunch, or when you're getting your coffee, or when you're getting your coat to go home later, you have no idea what the conversation is going to be. And if you have an audience online, for example, let's say you're already putting your ideas out there into the world, is there a truth that you've been holding back on saying? So I want to make an invitation for you to say one difficult truth aloud today. And it doesn't need to be to do with what's happening in the world on a massive scale, but it could be something fairly personal, you know. So I want you to have a think. Let's just spend 30 seconds on this. If you were to say one difficult truth today, what would it be? Maybe it's a text you need to send, something you've been holding back from saying to someone. Maybe it's asking someone on a date. Maybe it can be anything. Think beyond whatever the boxes currently might be. What's the difficult truth you could say aloud today? I'll write mine too. Is there a conversation you're avoiding?
Can I say something very trivial? It sounds trivial,
Please,
but it relates to conflict anxiety.
please.
This sounds very trivial, but it relates to conflict anxiety. My cleaner has failed to resupply my room here with toilet paper and shampoo. And I have yet to tell anyone about this, because I don't want anyone to end up in trouble because of such trivialities. So I'm thinking I might find sort of some spare toilet paper in some closet somewhere, or if someone has something to share. So from 3 up.
You have the same problem too?
Have you said anything?
I have to say, I am so grateful that you've just shared what you did. And the reason for that is because I think sometimes we think it has to be the big, huge thing that we say and do. But actually, it's the small little micro moments where we think, oh, I can't say this. It's not big enough. That's usually the case, right? It's not big enough. So we would rather wait until it compounds in some way, you know. And I also believe, and it's not even just a belief, it's something that I found to be a pattern for me in romantic relationships, where I have an opportunity to address my internal conflict there and then. But I tell myself it's not big enough. So I need to wait until we collect so many of these incidents that I implode and then have no choice but to explode, and then I will address it. And my goodness, that's exactly what we do online, offline, professional lives, personal lives. So I love the example that you've just given, because I think if all of us look at that as a source of inspiration to think, difficult truth doesn't have to mean this big, massive thing. What is a small but difficult truth that I need to put forward, you know? I had a similar thing with an iron this morning, but I'll tell you later. So I have my conversation to have as well. So this is your clarity rehearsal. Say one difficult truth today, whether it's small, medium, or large. Say it because it actually matters. Now, before we move on, does anyone have, or rather, does anyone feel comfortable enough to share what difficult truth they're going to share? And as a room, we can hold you accountable energetically to your truth. Is there a conversation anyone's avoiding? Is there a text anyone needs to send? Or is it a similar kind of practical thing that you need to ask for? 'Cause sometimes it's actually asking. A lot of us struggle to ask for help. Say, I need your help right now. I'm really struggling with this thing. Or can you do this thing for me? Can you pick up this thing for me? Because I don't have the time to do it. Anything. Does anyone want? Yes, 2 people. I'm going to come to you after.
So I was thinking about the truth that I can share, but then Johan made me feel guilty, and I need to share it first because I saw there was no paper yesterday, and I thought about doing something about it, but then I brushed it off. I was like, someone else will do it, and I feel super guilty. So I'm really, really sorry about that. But the other truth I think I can share with you guys is that it's not like I think about it, but I think deeply. I believe that that people value me because only of my work. So if I start working for it, for the relationships, for friends, for work, for anything, people will just not value me as a person. They value only the actions I do. So that's something I think I can share.
Thank you. Can I ask you, how does it even feel right now in this moment in your body to have shared that with us?
Shaking.
Good, good. The shaking is good because you've done it. And again, when we speak things out loud, especially things that have any kind of shame or embarrassment or insecurity attached to it, it's amazing how somatically in the body it can feel uncomfortable, but you will see how you feel for the rest of the day because you're not holding this thing that's supposed to feel like a secret, you know. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. And right behind you, the gentleman right behind you. Yes.
Yes. I think nowadays it's very hard for people to understand context, that there's very different levels of abstraction for very different things. And I think, as the previous person was saying, that it's very hard nowadays to differentiate between what makes a person and their ideas and ideals, which are in it. I find it very difficult to like integrate, like find a way to integrate the ideas or ideals with the people themselves, like in a holistic sense or integrate or whatever we want to call it. And yeah, I think that's something which I find very difficult to do nowadays. Like, how do we find the balance, like between all of these levels of abstraction, or I don't know, or vision? Because truth be told, all of them can be true simultaneously, and I think there's not enough spaces, let's say nowadays, that can actually bring people together and integrate them organically.
Yes. What's an example? If you were to give a clear, concrete example of this for you, what is one?
Just the division which is in society right now. I think that's like the biggest example, like the way it's fragmented everywhere, many ideas, many conflicts. I think like that's the biggest example there is, because like people are very disconnected. Yeah.
So, in terms of your difficult truth when it comes to that, what would you say your difficult truth is?
Mine, I don't know. I'm just like my personal one. I think it's very difficult like to position myself in one group,
Right.
because when I do that, it's like I pick a side, and I don't want to pick a side, and that's for me my difficult truth.
Right. Okay. I think I have more of an understanding now. And intuitively, I feel like I can relate to what you're saying in the sense that I believe that behavioral flexibility is really important, being able to adapt to the environments that you're in, right? However, I think when you're grounded and embodied in your values, you don't have to feel as if you're picking sides and having to sort of put on different masks and faces and costumes every time you're in a different room and with people that have a difference of opinion. Because I think we think that's what it has to be, but behavioral flexibility is me still being grounded in what I believe, being grounded in my worldview, but using discernment to understand my audience, to understand the room that I'm in, to understand maybe what opinion is appropriate in this moment in time and which one isn't. What do I feel comfortable sharing with these people because I can see from evidence that they're more open-minded and more tolerant versus actually it's not worth it this time around, you know? So I think ultimately it's discernment, but I don't know that you can practice discernment and true self-trust if you don't have defined values that you're testing out in real time. In those micro moments with the iron, with the toilet paper, when you need to actually just say, hold on, this doesn't feel good. Can we try something else? Or I don't believe that. I don't actually agree with that. I don't know what I think about this. Let me come back to you on that. You know, so I think there are ways, again, without having to be in the concrete black and white, I think there are ways to be flexible in your behavior without stepping out of integrity fully, right? Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So we've got a question.
Okay, so my heart, one truth to said is that I become a public person at a very early age. So the thing is, I was really popular. Everyone liked me. And this is so hard for me when I start to fight for my values, to said, it's okay, not everyone needs to like you. You need to fight for your values, no matter how hard it is sometimes. Because right now, I want to say that it's really hard, that I receive a lot of death threats, a lot of things like, I hope you get raped. So I just wanted to say to every woman who is possibly sitting here that it will happen if you fight for your voice. But it's sometimes okay that so many people don't like you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. And for me, what you're describing there, which is something that so many women I speak to face all the time, but so many people in general that are putting themselves forward and making themselves visible. And it doesn't always mean that you need to have a big audience to be a visible person, even at work, again, in your relationships. Just having a worldview that goes against the grain, that is a form of visibility. And it requires the willingness to be disliked, which is exactly what you're talking about. I think no one that has done anything worth their salt, no one that has done anything courageous or brave has been over-attached to being liked, because that will not allow you to make the changes in the world that you need to make. So I'm very grateful for you and for your share. And thank you. Thank you so, so much. We have come to the end of our session together. And again, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not here to tell you what to think. I just wanted to make sure that with the time that we do have, I can put forward some of my own convictions, but I can put forward questions as well. Because ultimately, exactly as I've said here, your voice, I truly believe, is a powerful, essential, urgent instrument that you need to use and refine and cultivate from moment to moment to moment, especially in the micro moments. And it makes me want to leave you with the question of what truth have you been waiting for permission to speak? Because you're in this room for a reason, you know. There's something that you're doing. There's something that you have within yourself. There's a curiosity that you have. There's an ambition that you have. There's a drive that you have that has led you to be in this room, engaging in this conversation today and this weekend. So what truth have you been waiting for permission to speak? And if you can think of anything, you don't have to say anything right now, but you can share with me later. You can write it down for yourself. You can explore it. But I really do invite you to trust your voice as the powerful instrument that it actually is. And we'll use the rest of our time together, maybe 15 minutes, for some questions, any questions that you have, or any insights that you also want to share with the room as well, because I do believe that they're important. Any questions for me or the room? Yes.
So, So I've never had any trouble saying what I think to other people, but you've made me think more about what I'm not willing to say to myself. And so the thing that I've come to come to realize, thinking about what you're saying, is that I think I have an sort of arbitrary dislike of authority. Like, I treat police officers, border guards, even politicians like school teachers. I just hate them because they're an authority. And so you've helped me realize that I need to process that. And so it's not really a question, but I would encourage people to think about what you're not saying to yourself as well as what you're not saying to others.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. That's beautiful. What are you not saying to yourself? Gosh, that's a great prompt, isn't it? What am I not saying to myself? Because I do think, exactly as you're saying, it is so easy to look at the external. And what I mean by that is a lot of us actually maybe don't struggle with self-censorship. A lot of us maybe are leaders. We're okay with saying what we think and what we feel. But what does it look like when you actually stop and listen to your internal world? What does it look like when you actually interrogate your communication style? What does it look like when you ask yourself, what are the things that I'm not showing myself about myself? And I think that's where it gets most uncomfortable for a lot of people. So I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Yes, Arkady, Ignorance Center Armenia. I appreciate your talk, your speech. It's very interesting and exciting. So I was thinking about the values again, and I find it very important to identify your values. One day, eventually, we need to take paper and write it down. Which are our values really? Which values do we have? Maybe we all, whether consciously or subconsciously, even subconsciously mostly have and act according to the values. But I think if we write it down, so we really, our motion is like we give course.
Yes.
And we act bolder.
Yes.
So the question is, we are social beings and we all want to be socialized. And for me, sometimes it's a challenge for me to move according to my values. So how to really clarify, identify your core values that really comes and write down and be focused and loyal and live according to those values. Thank you.
That's a great question. Can I ask you something so that I can answer that in a more kind of honest way? What are your values, or what do you believe your values are currently?
My values, I appreciate personal growth.
Great.
Yeah. Loyalty and kindness.
Beautiful. So what I would say, and I really agree with you about writing these things down, kind of taking them out of your internal world and making them real in some kind of way. And the way that I would recommend this, again, is very simple, but just a line in the middle of a page, write embodied and desired. So embodied are the values that you genuinely live by. Even if it's not every single day, more consistently in your life, you're living by these things. You're living in truth, you're living authentically, you actually value community and intimacy, whatever it is, embodied, right? You're living it. Versus desired, which is I want to be. Again, as I said before, I want to be someone that values freedom. I want to be someone that's more loyal, because you're saying loyalty, for example, is it loyalty to other people or loyalty to yourself?
Yeah, I have to think about that.
Yeah, no, I hear you. But is it, and we can kind of just riff with this in real time. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's just something to think about, right? When you say loyalty, if you look at the results in your life, are you more loyal to other people, which means maybe you're more agreeable? You will agree with things you don't agree with. Or are you also loyal to yourself to say, you know what, these are my values. I understand that you feel this way and you think in this way, and I respect and appreciate it, but this is what I stand for. So that loyalty can go both ways, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll
So
think more about that.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple more? Yes, and we'll come to you.
Thank you so much. I loved this session. You gave me so much to think about. So I'm curious, why are you so wise? I mean, you talked about your own experience of discovering this cognitive dissonance and realizing you weren't true to your values. How did that happen? Was it one moment, some confrontation, conversation, something you read? What's your story?
So, thank you for asking that. So, my story, and I'll try and make it as concise as I possibly can. So, my story actually starts with addiction. I got sober at 24, so I'm 32. I got sober at 24 after a decade of really struggling with alcohol addiction, and it came with other drugs as well. And I had relapsed, gosh, specifically, I relapsed 7 times from the age of 19 up until 24 when I finally got sober. And something that I always say, and if anyone in this room is already familiar with me and my work, I've spoken about this before, but my saving grace has always been my curiosity. Even before I had the language for it, I wanted to understand, why do I find myself in these cycles of self-destruction? Because my relapses were not because I missed alcohol and I wasn't physically addicted, but I was very psychologically addicted. But anytime that I would get well, I would feel very uncomfortable. So if I reached 3 months of sobriety or 6 months of sobriety, which is the longest that I did in that time frame, I would feel extremely uncomfortable, because I was so used to, and my nervous system was so used to a state of chaos, that having peace was terrifying. That's when I came across, I think at 22, I came across the term self-sabotage. And I suddenly had language for my experience, and I suddenly realized that what I thought was a moral failing was actually just a cycle of repetition, pattern recognition. And then that's when I also found Carl Jung's work around the shadow, of understanding that my shadow expressed itself when I was high, when I was drunk, when I was being promiscuous, whatever it was. But it's because I thought that I wasn't allowed to express all of these things in sobriety when I was not drunk. I believed that I needed to repress the wild parts of myself, so they could come out to play when I was drunk and high. So that's kind of where my curiosity comes from at 24 when I got sober 9 years ago. But even before that, I would say I've just wanted to understand why, as human beings, we make the decisions we have, but I have such a love and appreciation for the ugly things, you know, the things we want to hide from the world. So that's kind of my story and my why.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You had a question.
One of the issues I always have, and I think these climate change protagonists are perfect at that. They always come in to start the speech where they show how incredibly learned and experienced they are in one way. The two number one climate change protagonists in Germany, one is a famous doctor, one is a famous, a highly regarded economist. And they start with that. So every time you go in there and try to argue with them, the whole audience looks at you as like, are you a doctor? Are you a economist? How dare you talk against that? And I think it's incredibly difficult all the time to argue when people put themselves on this pedestal and you're not there. So of course it would be much easier if I was an economist, I could argue against.
Yes.
So I think it's something to learn, is it, to get ready for, that you have to stand up and say, well, you may be an economist, but still all the conclusions you have are bullshit.
Yes.
And it's very tough.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Hello.
Africa, I want to thank you. And I'm standing up right now to feel my heart racing. And I want to thank you for speaking to somatics, which is my field, because I think it's a very important vessel for us to make all these decisions and to get to know ourselves, our values, our standards. Yeah, so I'm very grateful for your work.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
So much. Thank you. I'm grateful. Thank you. Does anyone have a last question? We'll take one or maybe a couple.
Thank you very much, Africa. Very, very interesting stuff. So it really resonated with me about the idea of, binaries, these things are a journey, it's progression, it's like an arc almost.
Yes.
And everything you said about, self-realization, it really resonated with me. My question is, where do you draw the line between, let's say I'm on a journey and I try every evening, if I look in the mirror and say, like, Jacob, you've been an idiot today. You've done something that you shouldn't. Hopefully not every day, but, the question is, when you see other people in that sort of spiral of self-sabotage, or you see other people and you can say in your heart that I don't think they're being authentic, I don't think they're committed to their values or whatever, where do you draw the line between trying to police other people's behavior and almost, force them to get better and be a sort of commandeer of this is how you become the best version of yourself? But on the other hand, it is good in my mind to try and help people get better and help people see things in another way. I mean, where is that line in your mind?
Oh, that's a good question. I've thought about this quite a lot, and I've been asked the question quite a lot as well. But from personal experience, and you can tell me what you think, or anyone in the room, I've found that I've found that for change to truly happen, it rarely happens from a place of force or someone being preached at or lectured. Because take my sobriety, for example, it took me a decade to get sober. And in that time, I had met so many incredible sober people, so many people that had been in addiction, and they suddenly had the clarity. They knew what peace feels like. They knew what it looks like to be reliable in your life, to live a life that is full, etc. However, the people that were trying to sort of evangelize the thing, it did not connect with me in any way. You know what connected with me? The people that were living a sober life. The people whose joy I could feel just emanating from their being. The people who I could be in a rave with, and they would be the last person standing without needing to snort anything or drink anything. Or those were the people that I was like, I want some, I don't know what you have, but I want some of that. And then I would just find out that they are sober. That was way more attractive than someone that was telling me about the stats of drinking and what it does to people and what I'm doing to my body and myself and my mind. So when it comes to ideology, I look at it in pretty much the same way, to be very honest, in that even with my work, I think it's been a great success because I don't preach at people. I actually couldn't give a shit if you change your mind or not. That's kind of the approach that I take, because that makes someone say, hey, you should care, But I don't force, because I know what it's like to have ideas and worldviews forced onto me. So that's what I say. I think when you live the example, which was where the values come in, when you embody the thing, it makes it way more attractive and compelling to people, Even if you have that little thing inside you, especially when it's a personal relationship or someone and they're in self-destruction, I think there is no harm, with everything that I've said, I think there's no harm in planting seeds and in kind of being curious, saying, hey, I'm curious, why do you think that? And there's a way, even with tonality and delivery, but curiosity can also very much do the job. And it makes someone take pause and say, wait, why do I think that, But I think it's a very kind of, it's a very elegant act that you have to do when it comes to that. But I think embodiment is one of the most powerful things, for sure. Thank you. Thank you.